First of all, to all of you for gathering here today, the National Clergy Conversation on Gun Violence. People would say, clergy, gun violence, what's that all about? It's like, you need to understand, you are the part of the triage when there is an act of violence. The first people who respond, certainly law enforcement. Then there's usually the healthcare community that tries to save someone's life. But you're there literally sometimes on the streets with the family members, holding people's hands, wiping away tears, giving them love, saying prayers with them. And in some of the worst cases, having to make funeral arrangements and to open up your church to a grieving community. And so, of course, you are the most logical ones to raise these questions, sometimes tough questions, and say, why isn't more being done? So I thank you for gathering from all across this nation today to put a spotlight on this. And yes, there's been a lot of attention given to the COVID pandemic. There has had to be. But what we're seeing now is scary. As a result of this pandemic and so many things that have happened since then, what we experienced last summer when we saw an innocent man suffocated to death by a police officer in the streets crying for his mother. We're all seared with that image in our heads and understanding perhaps for the first time, many people in white America realizing that there is a whole different Black America that is being treated differently. So this is the culmination of all that. The stress of COVID, more people being home, victims of domestic violence, trapped in the home with their abuser, children at home who normally be in school, high school students wandering the streets because they don't have the discipline of being in a classroom, parents pulling their hair out because they just don't know what to do. They've lost their jobs, they've lost their sense of security. So it's actually a natural outgrowth, as much as I hate to say that. It's not unexpected that we would see a spike in crime and a spike in violence in our streets. And we just heard from the congressman, a great friend of mine, Hakeem Jeffries, who I served in Congress with. He talked about the national numbers, as did Bishop Garnes, the 38,000 lives lost a year. You look at a place like New York City, which was the epicenter of the pandemic. I don't think it's a coincidence that we've had I'm going to read this because it's hard to believe, a 45% increase in murders from 2019 to 2020. A 45% increase in murders. We had been on the downward trajectory. We haven't seen a spike like this in 20 years. And we've had a 97% more shootings than in 2019. Every one of those shootings, nearly 1,500, is a family that's been devastated. So what is the cause of all this? What is happening here? Well, you heard that we do have the toughest gun laws in America. Governor Cuomo and I have fought hard to make sure that there's no assault weapons, that we have the strictest background checks, that we eliminated the out-of-state loophole, so you can't be convicted of a crime in another state and still think you can get a gun here in New York. We also are doing more to protect women who we find out are most likely to be killed at the hands of one of their intimate partners, past or present, 50% chance likely of being murdered by someone you know and once loved, perhaps. And suicide rate. The access to guns is allowing people to, in their darkest hour, when the depths of despair, when they find no God in their life to guide them out of it, that they commit suicide because there's a gun accessible. So we're doing what we can in New York, but here's the problem, and you heard it so clearly from the congressman. If we don't have national laws on background check and assault weapon bans and more strict regulations, these guns are just going to keep flowing into our streets. And despite the best work of the GodSquad here in Brooklyn and the work with the police department, who are working so desperately hard every day to help protect the communities, we're going to be overwhelmed with this. But what we can control are giving people better options, better opportunities. I was in Brooklyn a couple of years ago when we announced something called Work for Success, asking corporations and employers to sign a pledge that they will hire people who have been incarcerated. We know that people who've paid their debt to society, they come out. The temptation is great to slip into their old world. We can stop that by giving them the dignity of a good job. We get companies to agree to do that. We also have to address the need that there have been a lot of people who lost their jobs that are desperate right now. Workforce development training will help them have the dignity of a job. even something like good nutrition programs to make sure that our youngest kids are growing up healthy and have the best chances of success, a home over their heads, dealing with the homelessness crisis. There is so much going on that we can control, and that is taking care of people when they're younger, give them good role models, bring them to our churches. We know the mamas and the grandmas are there. I sit there often and I say, where are the young people? Where are the young men who need to hear the word of God, to have a strong role model in their clergy, guide them to a better life? So I'm going to continue working with all of you as we come through this pandemic, working on getting vaccines. And this is another area I'm going to call on all of you as clergy members, not just on the gun violence issue, but also as the most trusted individuals in people's lives. When it's time and the vaccines are more readily available, and it pains me to know they are not, we need to continue focusing on getting those shots in arms in the Black and brown communities that have been hardest hit. A Black person has a higher chance of dying than a white person. It's unfair, it's unjust, it's just a statement of fact. Twice as likely chance of dying from COVID, twice. Why is that? We'll figure this out. We are in the middle of this pandemic. We also think it has a lot to do with the fact that many don't have access to good health care. But while we know that horrible statistic, we have to make sure that we're focusing on getting pop-ups to different churches where they can have it administered to people in their own communities. The time will come and we'll have more supply than demand. At that point, we're going to call on all of you to say to your congregants, it is safe to do this. This is how you can get your life back, get back to normal, and start feeling human again. And so that's something that's a little bit further down the road because we just are low on supply, but I'll be in Brooklyn next week opening a mass vaccination site at Medgar Evers. I know that some of you are from Chicago and other parts of our nation. I know your leaders are also working really hard to address this. We just can't make more supply than there is at this current rate, but we're getting there. So here's what I see. Maybe it's because I am a religious individual. I know that we are approaching the season of sacrifice as we witness what Jesus Christ went through the 40 days before his crucifixion. And this is a time for reflection for all of us and to talk about our role in helping save every single person, because every person has dignity and has a purpose. God put them there and they need to be protected. So I thank you. I'm going to continue to pray for you. And please pray for me and the governor and those of us in public life, because we need your guidance and your thoughts and your spiritual leadership now more than ever as we work together, as the faith-based community works with those in the governmental community, as well as our police officers, to help us bring up our communities. Let people continue to live and not fall victim to senseless gun violence. So thank you for allowing me a couple of minutes to express my gratitude for all you do, the God Squad in particular in Brooklyn, my hometown area, but also to everyone across the nation who cares deeply enough about this cause to be on this Zoom call at this very moment. Thank you.